I feel like a takeaway of a lot of these conversations is like, go make design friends.
How do you see past trends? I feel like there's a lot of just like trendy, like flashy brands for like a half-assed kind of product. And how do you find design schemes that are like evergreen?
I hate trendy design.
Yeah.
Every agency I've worked in, we've avoided it. It's been a no-no. I think that was just happenstance. That's definitely not the case. People love trendy shit. I just actively don't like it. Um, I Part of my problem with that is too that I just don't think anything's cool. That like if it's trendy, you know it's gonna die. I really
Hmm.
believe in timelessness in branding and design and advertising. And so our whole theory is modern heritage. So everything we do is rooted, our branding philosophy is rooted in modern heritage. So taking a brand, taking what's good from their heritage and then modernizing those elements. Sizzler is a prime example. Sizzler looked like dog shit. It was old, stuffy, very much rooted in the 80s or 90s, nothing there.
Hmm.
But it's a brand from 1958. It was really awesome. It had all of these assets. Did we make it look like it was 1958? No, because then that was just a retro throwback nostalgia, and that doesn't work. We took all of the really cool pieces from the past, even from the 90s, even from the 80s, and all the way back, and took like a collection of those and collaged those and made them into new assets. So you stripped all, we took logo, which everyone had a memory structure of for 40 plus years. Our target demographic is um millennial parents. Millennial parents didn't know it was cool, the cool sizzling logo from 1960s. They knew
Hmm.
what they remembered from being kids. So you took that, but we took off the drop shadow, we took off the gradient, we took off all the crap. There was all really weird little mark designer nerd stuff that we tuned up that no one will ever notice, but like, curve the S better and whatnot. And then put that mark on its slant and made it into a cattle stamp. So imbued it with more meaning, not abandoning anything, just taking everything that's working and really bringing it to the contemporary space and making it the most modern version of the past. Um, that's what I love to do. And that's what I think success looks like, because when you do that, you start to get into this space where it's the perfect version in the contemporary sense of the user experiencing it. And that is where I think you start to build timelessness. And
Yeah.
timelessness, we have slides that say timelessness over trendiness. So this is a very good question for that reason. Like we believe in timelessness, not trendiness. Trends are what advertising, like bad advertisers do. They take
Hmm.
the brand and they jam it into whatever trend's happening. It doesn't matter whether it links with the brand, it's just whatever's happening in culture currently at that moment. That's how we're going to use it to have the story. That worked in the 2000s and before. That does not work now. I would argue it didn't really work successfully, even in the 2000s, but it happened a lot.
Hmm.
Um, that is just trendiness. That doesn't mean anything. We're in the constant search for timelessness is what we try and do with everything. So you always look to the past to inform the future, and you always take from the past to modernize it and bring it into the contemporary sense. Some examples of that, which I find interesting, are the past is always right. If you look at Budweiser, Miller High Life, because it's the same time period. If you look at Budweiser can history, if we look at this, started in the 30s. It actually started before this, but it was in bottles, so it's not that. From 56 to nearly 90, it's essentially the same exact thing.
Hmm.
And then into 99, we got weird because it was the 2000, it was the millennium, and then they tried all this stuff that was emulating this and adding more bullshit into it. And then eventually we reverted all the way back to where it was. Because this huge chunk of the mid-century, which is 56 to 89, what is that, 40 plus years? And that proves to be true with every beer and product all throughout the mid-century, if you really, really do it.
Yeah.
If you look at this, what's it, 58? Actually, all the way back to 1900, but let's do the contemporary sense. 44 to 85. Nothing has changed. Sure, they modernized a little bit, whatever. And then we did this weird stuff, which was cool for the 80s and 90s, but it feels very much of that time period, which is trendiness, right? That's just like the old
Hmm.
version of trendiness. And then we get into 97 and the 2000s where they bring it all the way back to what they were doing, and then the contemporary version of that, which is super clean, is still the same thing. It's just a modern, it just very much feels like of our time period and not the 90s
Yeah.
version of that. But maintaining all of the equities. Because, and this comes from a design perspective, a memory structure perspective, why are we going to abandon the things that have been working so much for us? It's only when things are really, really wrong and completely go haywire that you need to reinvent the wheel, which I would
Mhm.
argue you still don't need to reinvent the wheel. You need to reinvent how you're advertising or marketing. So everything is perfect from the past because that is what we remember of it. And that is when it was so much the same thing for so long. And consistency over time equals timelessness, ultimately, right?
Mhm.
Because it has to. Because when all of the trends and all of the trendy bullshit is happening, and you are exactly the same, exactly who you are as a brand throughout that, it stays consistent. What timeless brand? Heinz ketchup in a glass bottle.
Yeah.
The reason why that's timeless is not because it's been around for so long. It's part of the equation. It's because everything that has changed over time, it's still been that. When you look at Heinz in 1900, it's in that container. And when you look at it in 1990 on the table of Pulp Fiction in a movie, it's exactly the same thing that has happened. So just naturally, because it was so consistent over time, it ultimately becomes timelessness. So that I think all of these are making cases on why you should never do trendy bullshit just for
Mhm.
the sake of it, because it's not going to last. It doesn't move the needle. It is a flash in the pan. I'm very anti all of that, and I think that like deteriorates brands over time and causes trouble for brands ultimately. That's not
Yeah.
to say you can do really fun and trendy and cool things all surrounding the brand with the brand, but you shouldn't fuck with the brand to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that answer. Um, Awesome. Okay. And then I have one last, as someone who I didn't have a very traditional like design um study. It
Mhm.
was kind of like learning through doing. So how do you find the balance between like intention, like formulas, making sure everything is like very meticulously measured out versus what feels right and what kind of looks right to you on your screen? Does that make sense?
I think that
When you're
needs to be
designing.
very specific to whatever you're doing. So packaging, like
Okay.
it needs to be very specific to what is correct, what is wrong. But that's a whole can of worms to discuss. I think I don't just you don't need a traditional design education in my opinion. I don't think you need to go to school for it. I think you can learn it yourself. Even in design school, yeah, we were guided by professors, but like I really believe in art school and design school you learn the most from your peers. So what
Mhm.
I would do is whether that's online, like that could be like Instagram homies who are just designers that you're sending shit back and forth to. This morning was a guy I went to school with, but who I'm just friends with, just actual friends with from school. We weirdly worked together for like a brief period of time, but we haven't worked together since the year 2014. This morning he texted me and was like, "Can you look at some stuff? I'm trying to pick colors for the cover of an annual." Just random, and he was like, "I just need some second opinion." And we literally like went through for 30 minutes this morning and did like a digital crit via text message, being like, "Should I do it this color? What about this?" And he's scamping stuff up and sending it to me, and I'm scamping stuff up and sending it back. That's what you do in design school. That's what you do in
Yeah.
work at design. So like make friends, work with like-minded people and ask for advice. And people want to do that. Like did he pay me? Do that? Absolutely not. But he's a friend and like we had a really good time picking out colors because we're all designers and we like to do that. So I think like make like-minded friends, find people, find some semblance of community who do what you do and like jam that way. And that'll come everywhere. You very well might find that um, at your day job, even though you guys are working on specifically pharmaceuticals, that doesn't mean everyone's still not a designer and likes to do illustration or is freelancing doing this. And you just bring that to each other and talk about it. Um, It'll happen on your design team if you're at, we are do a lot of spirits. So like nerding out about spirits at all times just kind of naturally happens internally in our design team. So even if even if it's not actually doing the design work, it's talking about it, things that are cool, things that you're liking. I mean, rapidly or very often we talk about we just send pictures of things we saw are cool. Like I was on my way to a wedding the other day and I sent it in the team, like the design team group chat, which was like this really like post office billboard that I saw that's like fucked up type and stuff. And then that influences you and how you develop it. So like design it is very much, Alex Center always says, it's a team sport, which like he means that literally internally at agencies, but I do think it's like a collective of sorts that make you better. So you don't need a formal education, but you do need a good, peer group, whoever they are. They could be 100 years old too. It doesn't have to be a bunch of kids, that likes the same thing and are in the same world that you're talking about and discussing this with, whether it be text crits, or actual crits, or like literally hanging out with someone and working at a coffee shop next to each other while they do their freelance work and you do your freelance work. I did that over the years. That just makes better work. So it makes you better as a designer. So I think ignoring your technical skills, which I know that's what you were asking for, I do think that will build technical skills over time. And even if it's like, here's a hack within the program, it's not even that. Like, you will just be like, someone's going to call out. If I'm sitting next to you and you're doing a pack design, I most likely will lean over to you, no matter what my level is, and be like, I think that's a little too small. And then it'll change, and then you're into your technical bit of like, why is that type too small on the bottom of this pack? And so I do think it's like finding other people and asking for feedback. Someone recently sent me like their portfolio, and like, I'm not going to, this isn't me advertising redoing everyone's portfolio, but I'll gladly like shoot some notes that like push you in a different direction of where you see it. So like asking someone who is more seasoned of like, is this working? Is this not working? I think is a fair shout on like a single piece of something that you're working on. And I think everyone really likes to be designers and really likes to work with other people. At least that's been my experience for the most part. So like everyone's going to be very generous with feeding back. And I think that's how one can learn without having a super formal education or necessarily working somewhere where you're working on a specific type of work that you want to grow in. So pharmaceuticals, you're going to be great. You're going to be working around a bunch of people who are super experienced, and that's what you're going to be obsessed with and talking about for 8+ hours a day. So finding, other groups and other areas of interest within design that will ultimately help the pharmaceutical too, right? Like that'll help your day-to-day in pharma or healthcare or whatever. But also it'll build another skill out there. So it's, yeah, make friends and design things, I guess, is the takeaway.
Awesome.
Sign up for AIGA New York, sign up there, and then go to those events where you'll meet people. And I feel like a takeaway of a lot of these conversations is like, go make design friends, which you do at your job, but like no one tells you that as like 2 or 3 years out of school. It just kind of naturally happens. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, a lot of my friends are designers.
I'll totally sign up for that. That's great.
Cool. Yeah. Sign up for both AIGA and then our newsletter.